Let's go through my eyeshadow palette collection and let's declutter some eyeshadow palettes. Now I don't plan on getting rid of any certain X amount or getting down to anything. I'm really just going to be going through and seeing if there's any palettes that I can get rid of. And then also I will be putting some aside to just further try out before I make a decision. I have already decluttered some palettes throughout the year. It wasn't like a full-on declutter. I didn't film it or anything, but I have taken out some palettes out of my collection already. So let's get right into it. First up, we have my Viseart palettes. I do have all of them, and also I'm not going to be swatching all these palettes because I do have over 200 palettes, so that's just not doable. So I'm going to be at least showing you each of them inside. So this is the Warm Mattes palette. This is the Neutral Mattes Milieu. And then I forget this one, Neutral Matte. I really hope that their Cool Mattes comes back in stock in this size because I really want it. And then the Editorial Brights palette. So vibrant, so bright and colorful. And then the Dark Mattes palette. And then lastly is the Grande Pro. This is the original version. They do also have a Brights version, which has basically all of these kinds of colors in it. Essentially a rainbow palette, and then they also have an all shimmer palette. But anyways, I love the Viseart matte formula, so that's why I have quite a few of their palettes. They're definitely one of my favorite formulas. Next up are the Urban Decay Moondust palettes, and these came out in 2023, and I do really enjoy these. These are my only Urban Decay palettes because nothing ever really appeals to me from them. But this is the more neutral palette, and then this is the more kind of sort of colorful. And now these are look at how sparkly they are. They're so beautiful, but I do have quite a bit of fallout with these, and sometimes even with a glitter primer. So if you have hooded oily lids, definitely would say like buy these with caution. And I am keeping both of these. I am kind of going by brand because I just think it's easier, and I also try to keep my palettes together by brand. So these are some Patrick Ta palettes. This is the first one I ever got from them, and this is the Major Dimension palette. So this one has shimmers and mattes and these two creams. I can't really get any use out of the creams, unfortunately, because I do have creasy, oily, hooded lids. The shimmers are really beautiful. The mattes fill in really nicely. I am going to be keeping this one. And then this is the limited edition face and eyeshadow palette. I really wish that I could just get these out of here. I might try to depot them, honestly, because I do want this in my drawer of where I keep kind of like my go-to palettes so that they're nice and easy to get access to. So I am keeping this one as well. So I don't have a lot of eyeshadow palettes from mainstream brands. I do predominantly have an indie makeup collection, but I do have this, what is it called again? Ethereal Eyes palette. This one came back in stock, and I did snag it because I did really regret not getting it. These are very topper-like shades there, and I mean, look at just how shiny these are. So pretty. And then there's also this shade, which is a little bit more pigmented, PC, so I'm keeping this one. This is the Beautyverse palette from Charlotte Tilbury. This is my first ever Charlotte Tilbury palette, and I'm going to be keeping this one. If you watch my video review on this, I love these cream to powder mattes, which it's just these three at the top. Not really a huge fan of just the regular matte. I really wish this was also a cream to powder. And then these shimmers are just so beautiful, very topper-like, very sparkly, so definitely keeping that one. And then this is these Supreme Mauves from Artist Couture. Haven't really heard them launch anything in a while, and I love the mattes in here. Like, I will literally reach for this palette just for the mattes because I think they're really nice mattes. They're very pigmented, very blendable. I can get a really easy look. Some of the shimmers in here are a little bit okay-ish, and some of them are better than others, but I will be keeping this palette. Onto Natasha Denona. This is the Mini Trio Chrome palette. Honestly, I was pretty disappointed in this palette. I kind of had a feeling that the multi-chrome wasn't really going to be that great. And it really isn't. It's very powdery, and I understand like it makes sense for the audience of Natasha Denona for this to not be like the punchiest black-based multi-chrome. I honestly don't see myself reaching for this, even just for the matte, so I'm going to be decluttering that one. And then I also have these three palettes. I saw that they're actually still selling, I believe it's this one, the Cranberry Salad, the Cranberry Salad palette. It's still on their website. Now, you can see a couple of the shades, unfortunately, are very fragile and they are broken. But let me tell you, I think these are some of the best eyeshadow palettes from Natasha Denona, and I've had two of these for at least like 6 years, and I believe this one came out maybe like a year after that. But I've been on YouTube for 6 years. I've had these for 6 years, and some of my very first videos are actually with these two palettes, so I'm going to be for sure keeping these for nostalgic reasons. I don't really reach for them because I honestly forget because they're kind of, you know, older. But like, I mean, look at this shimmer. It's so beautiful, so glistening, so shiny. And then the blue, it's still so shiny and beautiful. Formula wise, these have not deteriorated one bit. I mean, they're still so smooth and beautiful. So I'm definitely keeping these, and I kind of want to actually reach back into these. Look at this pink. It's so stunning. And then this one right here. I remember having a little bit of issue of this cream to powder matte. It was kind of hard panning. You really want to avoid swatching these at all. The oils from your fingers really just do not jive well, so I'm keeping those. And then this is the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. I keep leaving this around and thinking I'm going to use it, but honestly, I don't even reach for it anymore. I'm just going to swatch a couple of the shades. I mean, they're really, really nice. And I just think there's a lot of same. I mean, even these two shades right here that I just swatched are very similar. These feel a little bit on the drier side, and I don't remember how they felt when I first got the palette, but I feel like it is possible that the shimmers in here have ooh, that one's really pretty. So I'm not really sure. I kind of am on the fence. I kind of want to declutter it. So I think I'm going to put this one aside into the pile of like to try before decluttering, but this one is definitely on the chopping block to get possibly decluttered in 2024. So this is the Yucca palette from Natasha Denona. This one launched 2023, and these shimmers are so beautiful, so beautiful. I need more shimmers like these from Natasha Denona. Definitely keeping this one. I love the color story as well, though I do feel like you will get a lot of very similar looks out of that palette, but I mean, obviously you're not going to be buying that palette unless you love green eyeshadow. Next up is the I Need a Nude palette. This one has some really beautiful shimmers as well. I wish there was one more deepening up shade in here, but this is a nice palette, so I'm keeping that one. The Love palette, I believe this was a Valentine's Day launch like a few years ago at this point. Honestly, I don't ever reach for this. I'm going to declutter this one. The Cosmos palette from ABH. I do also have the Subculture palette right here, and I will be keeping this one because it is nostalgic, but I'm not going to be keeping it with my main collection of eyeshadow palettes. It's going to be in the like nostalgic drawer. So the Cosmos palette has some really beautiful shimmer shadows, and their matte formula is still really nice. I didn't have any issues with these mattes. I really enjoyed them, and I really like some of the shimmers in here, but not all of them. I wish they were all kind of like the Quasar, Supernova, and Super Cluster formulas. The shade Orion is so weird. It has like gold flecks throughout it that just kind of blend away once you put it on, and it just looks really weirdly like PC, not in a good way. I think I'm gonna keep this one, but just for reference only, but it might get decluttered because I don't really reach for it. Huda Beauty, this is the Wild Jaguar palette. I don't think this one's available anymore. I really enjoy this palette. Love the mattes. I think assortment of shimmers with the mattes. The shimmers are really beautiful, very sparkly, especially this one right in the center. Would love to see more cute little curated 9-pan color stories from them again. So this is the Mercury Retrograde palette, and I actually decluttered this palette and then I repurchased it. So this is the repurchase version, so that's why it looks untouched, because it almost is. And I really just love the shimmers in here, and I want to have it for reference, but I really need to dip into this some more because it is a stunning palette. It is one of the best palettes from Huda Beauty. I really feel like Huda Beauty just knocks it out of the park. This is the new Nude palette. Love this palette as well. I did use it quite a bit when I first got it. For the mattes, I do wish there was a deepening up matte, and I feel like that's probably why I don't really reach for this palette, because I feel like I'd have to dip into something else, and that's just not really something I'll do if I'm like getting ready for work. There's also two pressed glitters in here, which I'm not a huge fan of at all, but I'm keeping that one around. And then Rose Quartz, this is probably my favorite palette from them. Oh my god, this palette is so stunning. The shimmers in here, oh, and we need more shimmers like these two, but especially Moon Magic. Like, these are so stunning. They're so shifty. Oh my god, they're so sparkly. I love this palette. And then this is the Naughty palette. This one also really beautiful. Also has some really nice metallics in there and some deepening up shades and mid-tone mattes as well. So also keeping this one. So I'm keeping all of them. Oh, Kaleidos. Back when Kaleidos was very fun. Kaleidos made some really beautiful color stories and really unique packaging, which they still do have really nice packaging, don't get me wrong, but these were just something else. So especially this one is a standout to me. The Electro Turquoise palette. Just look at this color story. It is so fun. Love this one. Keeping. You can't get these anymore. Definitely not the Electro Turquoise. I believe that they're trying to kind of get rid of the stock for these, so I don't know if they're available anymore. But this is the Sashimi City. Again, like packaging, 10 out of 10. So stunning. And then we do have some beautiful sparkly shimmer shots. This is like a neutral palette. And then the Lunar Lavender, so pretty. And the Astro Pink. So I think this is not going to stay with my main collection because, again, they're not available anymore. So I'm going to be putting those into kind of like my makeup archives. Next is the Flower Punk palette. This one opens up this way, and it's apparently very messy. I haven't used this in a while. Oh, no. And it's apparently very messy. I haven't used this one in a very long time. I just was really missing some deepening up shades in here, but the shimmers are really, really nice. So I am going to be keeping this one. I do love the packaging. Super, super fun. Very unique kind of design. This is the Escape Pod palette. This one is just so chunky. They did send me the new version of this where I think this part is plastic, but I did just decide to keep my original version, and I'm going to be keeping this one around. I believe that one is still available. And then we have, of course, the Club Nebula collaboration palette with Angelica Nyquist. I have kind of decluttered this one because this one is never coming back, but I really do love the color story in here, and I love the shimmers. And I think it's very nostalgic, so I'm going to be keeping this one in my special nostalgic drawer. Here's just a variety of different brands. So the Venus XL2, I did buy this off of Mercari to be able to reference for my video. What if this eyeshadow palette launched this year? And I tend to always condense it and just add some very special multi-chrome, beautiful kinds of shimmers. So that's why I have this one, keeping that one, also very nostalgic. And then the Metamorphic palette, I did a video on this semi-recently within the last couple of weeks. And these shimmers are really stunning, but they're very, very squishy. But I am keeping this one for reference. And also, I just have to be a little bit careful on how I use the shimmers, but I can definitely use them. This is the Dede Signature Jingle Bell Ruby palette. And I do also have a video on this one. I do have dedicated videos on probably 90%, 95% of these palettes. This one, the mattes are not really my favorite. I definitely think they could be improved. And these two shades are extremely similar. And then these two actually look very similar on the lid as well. And this one doesn't really deepen up as much. And two of the shades in here are a little bit squishy, so I have to be careful. So all in all, like, not my favorite palette, but I do want to keep it around because I do like the color story. And I do like this brand, and I also really hope to see in 2024 they do something a little bit better for the outside packaging. And it just feels like really, I don't know how to, like, if you have this palette, you know what I mean? Like, the way this feels, just, it feels weirdly like a layered print on top, which is not my favorite. So I would love to see them improve the package. Next up is the Dive Cosmetics, the Moth and the Moon palette. Fun fact, I did the logo for them, and this is their very first palette. It is a brand started by my dear friend Monica M. Jones. I think it's 5018. I know that she has some numbers at the end of the username, and I'm horrible at remembering usernames. And the shimmers in here are just so beautiful, so spectacular, and I can't wait for everyone to see what they have coming next. So definitely keeping that one. On to Nomad Cosmetics. I have throughout the year decluttered a couple of their other palettes that I had, like the Whistler Lodge. I believe there was like two kind of rainbowish colorful palettes. I did declutter those for no other reason that I just wasn't like in love with the color story. Like these palettes, I love the color stories and I love the formulation as well. This is the Royal Europe palette, and we have some kind of mid-tone and deeper kind of matte shades with some black-based multi-chromes. I love to see this kind of palette come out. I feel like it's really nice if you don't want to buy single eyeshadows of these and you just want like a cohesive palette to use, then that one. And also packaging so beautiful. And then this palette, which is this right here, it's kind of hard to read, but I'm not even going to try to pronounce that because I do not speak French. And this is, I think, one of the most unique color stories they've done. I just love this color story so much. I think it's very, very unique, and I love it. And the shimmers in here are really beautiful. And the Iceland Fire and Ice palette, and love this color story. Love the shimmers in here. Beautiful assortment of mattes as well. Just really well curated. The Haunted Europe palette, I love this palette so much. This is such a fun theme, really unique. Love the mattes and the shimmers in here. And then, of course, the Ghost Town USA palette that just launched in 2023. Definitely also really, really love this one. I love the fact that the mattes are in columns and the shimmers are in columns. So you can kind of use these like per 6 shades, or you can obviously mix and match. So I love all these palettes, keeping all of these. Next up are these Glammatrix Cosmetics palettes. I have quite a bit of their palettes. I do really enjoy their formula. This is the Nearly Natural palette. Let me look at the shimmers and look at the mattes. So beautiful. for sure keeping, this is the Rich Romantic palette. You can see this one has smaller pads, and also this is no longer hand pressed formula, which is totally fine. These shimmers are so sparkly, so beautiful. Not the biggest fan of these mattes. I do feel like the formula has like changed just a little bit. I don't know whether that's just the pressing or if it's an actual formula change. And then the Sugar and Spice palette. This one is very beautiful in terms of shimmers, but I'm not like the biggest fan of this color story. I do prefer the Rich Romantic, but I'm keeping all of these. And then the Beauty. This is before they switched to this like cool fall leather packaging. I don't remember the last time I reached for this. I do really want to keep Good Day though, so I'm not really sure, but I do think I'm gonna let this one go. And then the Sandra Rose palette. And unfortunately, these shades are so fragile, and I don't think this palette is available anymore. I know they did like a mini version of this one, but I think it's time to let that one go as well. And then the Glamorous palette. I love this color story so much. I really feel like these three palettes to me are like the true standout palettes for Glam Matrix Cosmetics, because these color stories are just something else. I mean, they're so beautiful. The shimmers are beautiful. The mattes are beautiful. I love the layout of these also because I just feel like something about them just feels really nice and sleek, so I'm keeping all of those. Next up are all my Adept palettes. House of L, keeping this forever. Love this. I love the multi-chrome right here. It is such a beautiful shimmery, sparkly multi-chrome. The Element 115, this is the most recent palette, and I actually just finished filming with this one, so this video will be going up after you see this declutter, so stay tuned for that. I did do a couple swatch comparisons in that video, but honestly there's not a lot of multi-chromes in this palette in particular, which I think is why probably the price tag is a little bit lower. This is the Sumerian Sunset palette. I was so excited for this palette, but I was a little bit let down because some of the formulas in here are just not really friendly for everyone. So some of the shades felt like literally sticky and just really wet, and it's just not really good for my hooded oily lid. So it is a little bit unfortunate. There's like a holographic eyeshadow in here. I do like the mattes, but definitely think that it could have used some more depth. But I am keeping this one around. I just have to be really careful on how I use some of the shades. And then the Seahorse palette. This was probably one of my biggest disappointments of 2023. I don't know what it is. There's just some shades in here that were really subpar in my opinion and not on par with a lot of their other palettes and the shimmers in those palettes for $140, which I think is actually really interesting because this palette has been on sale pretty much since the launch. Like even during the launch it was on sale for 20% off at least, and I've seen constantly it going on sale because I think that they just know it's too pricey. This is the Plain Jane Remastered. I do have a video on this one, and I did compare it to the original Plain Jane. Now this one obviously is a little bit older. I do feel like these are probably not squishy anymore, but these are so beautiful, so I'm definitely keeping both of them. The Heather Austin collaboration palette. Some of the shades in here were a little bit squishy, specifically Austin. This is such a beautiful color story. I love the assortment of the mattes with the shimmers. Really nicely done. And then the Minka palette. And these are extra sparkly, very PC, and you will probably get quite a bit of fall with these shades. There's also a holographic shade in here. I noticed the smell about like, I want to say 6 months ago, maybe a little longer, where it smells a little like kind of, I thought it was off, but it was actually like nutty because apparently they have it on their website where this contains some sort of a nut oil, so that's why it kind of smells. So just in case you're experiencing the same thing. This is the original Anhydrous palette right here, and then I have the remastered. Now this one is actually, I believe, the second remastered version of it, so there was another remastered version before this one. And yes, this one is untouched because I do plan on doing a video on this, but I wanted to take some really nice pictures of this before, so that's why it is still untouched. But this is what that one looks like, so I'm keeping all of these. Here are all my Melt palettes. These are some that I've definitely decluttered kind of on and off throughout the years. So here's the 420. I love this palette. I love the color story, still so good. I also have the Fatally Yours palette, which is somewhere right now, but I haven't used that one yet. This is the Rust palette. I love these kinds of toads. Definitely keeping that one. Here's the Mary Jane. Honestly, I don't use this like at all, and I wish there was more mattes in here than shimmers because I'm not like the biggest fan of their shimmers. I don't think many people are. Now these are definitely a little bit nicer for, no, it's not that great. I don't know. I do think I'm going to declutter that one because I just don't reach for it. This is the 27 palette. This one is long gone. The mattes in here are just so beautiful. I love the tones. I'm definitely keeping this one. I do still reach for that palette. Not often, but I do reach for that one. This is the original Gemini palette. I did not have any like weird mold issues or anything like that, though this shade has exploded just like out of the pan, but it's fine. And I love the mattes, and actually I have the newer version of that one as well with the cool imprints in it. I don't know, there's just something nostalgic about this one, so I'm gonna keep both of them, even though I really don't need to. And then the Gemini 2 palette, which is just like another rendition of the other Gemini palette, obviously, hence the name. But this one is really beautiful, rosy tones with some green, so keeping that. Tons of indie makeup palettes in here. I have decluttered pretty much all of my Menagerie palettes with the exception of the Pastel Pup, because I do love this formula. That being said, I have so many pastel palettes at this point that are larger and have really great shimmers in them, and that have deepening up shades in them as well. And I just feel like this one, to me, is a little bit kind of obsolete in my collection. So I'm going to be decluttering that one, which means an end of an era of Menagerie in my collection, unfortunately. This is the Peaches and Dreams palette from Shroud Cosmetics. They have updated their shimmer formula, and it is beautiful. Definitely keeping that palette. Also keeping the Creepy Cute palette. So cute. Love, love these palettes. The Creepy Cute, the original one, before when they were called Strobe Cosmetics still. I might actually eventually buy the newer version of this, just so that it's nice and compact in the smaller version. I really like that. This is the Hello Beam palette, which is the second collaboration with Betty Bead, aka Betty Jean, and I'm keeping this one. I do want to reach for this palette and the Moonfall palette for some single eyeshadows as well for BYOP, so definitely keeping these. This is the Moonfall palette. This was originally a singles bundle, and they made it into an eyeshadow palette, and I'm so glad they did. These are not like the sparkliest, but Devotion and Soulstone are really beautiful nevertheless. Then I have the Uma Black Magic palette. I did do a dedicated video on this one. I really don't like the mattes in here, but the shimmers are like, I don't know what is in these shimmers and how they're made, but look at that. They're so beautiful. I think I'm going to depot the shimmers out of here and just get rid of the rest of the palette because the mattes are really not great at all. This is the Tiny Marvels eyeshadow palette, which was a collaboration between Mel Thompson, may she rest in peace, and Cindy Grace. This is such a beautiful palette. Like, this truly is just such a memorable palette, not only because it's Mel Thompson, but like the color story, the formula, everything is so amazing. I'm never getting rid of that one. You will never see me declutter that palette, for reals. This is the Cosmic Wonder palette from Terra Moons. This is their second palette ever, I believe. So they also had the El Barrio palette, which is this one. And I think it's time to declutter this one. It had its moment, and while I do really like it, I think it's time to let that one go. And then the Cosmic Wonder, I think I'm going to depot this one and just use these as single eyeshadows because they're so beautiful and sparkly. And I feel like they're going to do better as singles for me. And then I'm just going to keep the outside packaging because it is really beautiful. I have the two Hindash palette, the Monochromans and the Beaute. And while these are both gently pigmented, they are very buildable, and I do enjoy that. And I also feel like this kind of matte formula doesn't accentuate any skin texture. Next up, onto Pat McGrath. These are all the Pat McGrath palettes I have. These are the more recent ones from this year's holiday collection 2023. These two, and then this is the Face and Eye palette. And I did do dedicated videos on these. I did face swatch all four of the blushes, and I love the cheek blush formula. This one is what has the multi-chrome, the black base multi-chrome shade in here, and I do have the pink packaging in that one, so keeping that one. Oh, I actually totally just realized that this is the Vanity Makeup palette. Now, I got this, I want to say last year. I don't love the mattes in here, and I think this one I might put on the chopping block for getting decluttered in 2024, so I'm going to put that one aside to put in that pile. And then these are actual Pat McGrath palettes, so of course, Utopian Dream. I love the sparkly shimmer shadows in this one. And then this is the, I always forget the name of this one, but I also love this one. Such a good palette. And then this one, of course, I did get this one recently because I do want to have this one in my collection, and I'm actually planning on probably doing, what if this palette launched this year with this palette, and do just like another version of this one, so that is potentially coming up. Here are my Blend Bunny palettes. So the Makina palette, the most recent palette, then the Dollhouse All Done Up, Blur, Sugar and Grunge, and obviously I'm keeping all of these. Sickly Sweet, which was in my top 10 rankings of palettes I tried in 2023. The Surge, which is no longer available, unfortunately. And then the Original Blends. I love that one. Have quite a few dips in that one. Primal. And lastly, Forget Me Now, which is really mostly a face palette. Onto my Unearthly palettes. Fall Magic. Love this one. Sorcerer's Smoke, love this one. And then Don't Be Jelly. The shimmers in here are a little bit hard panny. You just have to make sure to use a brush and not your fingers, but otherwise it performs really nicely. I love the color story. The In the Dark palette, I think it's time to let this one go. And then the Hauntingly Glamorous, this is my very first palette I tried from Unearthly. This is when they were still Alien Cosmetics. This is a collaboration palette, and the mattes in here are spectacular, so I'm keeping that one. And then the Not Normal palette, love the color story. So next up I have these 3 Ace Beaute palettes. I've honestly decluttered these, put them back in my collection, decluttered them again. Every time I open these palettes, I'm like, oh my god, these are so beautiful. So the Oceanic palette, this is the newer version, the reformulated version. So the shimmers are better, the mattes are better, and everything. Look at this color story. I mean, it is so beautiful, a grungy dream. The Flare palette still holds its own, I think, with the color story. So stunning. I'm just on the fence. I think I need to retry these palettes and then make a decision. I think if I had to declutter one, it would be the Oceanic palette, because I just definitely feel like I have plenty of blue-green color stories that I think are actually better than this. Next up are my Simply Posh palettes. The Cozy Cabin, love this one, beautiful color story. The Aurora Lights, this is their most recent palette, love it, love the color story, love that the pans are removable in all of these. And then the Berry Icy palette, so I never got to try this one. I think I swatched Delicious and Berry Icy just very lightly, but this one kind of got sent to me right around the time where these were all out of stock, and they were kind of redoing a couple of things, and they kind of went away for a little bit, for a couple of months, to realign on where they were going with the brand. So I never got to do a video on this one, but I do want to keep it because I really like the idea of having these single eyeshadows. So I'm kind of contemplating labeling these on the back and then adding them to my singles collection. So we'll see. Same as the Berry Icy palette, the Fairy Tale Fairies. Haven't had a chance to use it yet. It is a really, really beautiful, and I love their aesthetic of the mattes on the top, the mattes on the bottom, and the shimmers in the center. Look at how sparkly the shades are, so beautiful. So I'm going to keep that one around just a little bit longer as well. And the Citrus Punch palette, I did do a video on this one. Unfortunately, there's one shade that's kind of broken in here. Not kind of, it is very broken. These mattes are super, super pigmented. Unfortunately, the shimmer shades did hard pan on me, but nevertheless, it is a beautiful palette. So I'm just going to be keeping this one around, and I'm going to contemplate if I want to just separate these out into singles, because I'm not really sure if those palettes are coming back. On to Bella Beaute Bar. This is the Angles of Illumination palette. This is like a new version of their previously launched palette. And these are all removable, shimmery, sparkly eyeshadows. I have a video up on this. I did do comparisons, keeping that one. Basic Witch, love this palette, keeping this one. Recently De-Influenced, absolutely love keeping. Bejeweled, I really was impressed with this palette. I love Blue Sapphire and Star Ruby so much, so definitely keeping this one. The Sun and the Sea, love the shimmers in here, though I just feel like these mattes up here are so redundant. Like, this palette could have been perfect if they weren't all so brown. And then a Smoky Glam palette, which was in my top 10 palettes of 2023. Love this one. And then of course the Pastel Garden, also such a good palette. Beautiful. Lots of pastels to choose from. This palette and the Sickly Sweet and the Lands of Enchantment definitely are the ones that just beat out the Pastel Pop palette from Menagerie. Moving on to Lethal Cosmetics. This is their most recent palette. Such a beautiful palette. I did recently do a dedicated video on that one. This is the One Up palette. I think I'm gonna let this one go. I do like the shimmers in here. They definitely amp them up. I just don't reach for it. There's no use in just me keeping those shimmer shades. Next, I have the two collaboration palettes with Teresa is Dead. So Teresa is Lethal and Lethal is Dead, which I love. That's so funny. And here's what those look like. I love the matte formula, and they've definitely amped up their shimmers quite a bit. So this is the older shimmers in here, and I'm keeping all of those. This palette I love. This is the Wildflower palette. I love this palette so much. Definitely will be keeping that one. And then these two palettes, I forget always. I think this is Metamorphosis or Metamorphic or something like that. Beautiful. Keeping that one. And then I think this one is, I feel like it's Evergreen or something. I don't know. I literally can't remember, and I'm not really sure why they stopped printing that. Oh, maybe because of the holes in the back. But these are all removable. I think I might move some of these with my singles, honestly, because I feel like it might fit nicely in there. I think that in general, anything that has removable pans, for me, if I don't have it with my single eyeshadows, I'm going to forget about it because they're like categorized with the palettes. but I just feel like these are so stunning. I think these would be great for sub BYOPs. So I'm gonna have to figure something out with that. I've been filming for like an hour at least at this point, and I'm sweating. So I'm gonna try to make it through because we have quite a few more palettes to get through. So this is the Dragon Fruit palette from Clionadh in collaboration with Emily Violet Murray. Unfortunately, this is a replacement palette and it's still broke, but the shimmers in here are so beautiful. Definitely keeping that one. Then here's the Cold Moon palette from Ensley Rain. I did just do a dedicated video on that one recently, so I'm keeping that one. Also keeping Harvest Moon, of course. I mean, look at this, how beautiful. I did order the Flower Moon palette, but that one is on pre-order, so it's going to be a while before I get that one. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a dedicated video on that one. I just do want to have it in my collection. This is the Lands of Enchantment palette. So beautiful. And then the two Devinah Myricks palettes. This is the second one that they just launched. Then the Lightwork 3 palette that they launched before this one. This one is no longer available, unfortunately, but such good palettes. Very great options if you don't want to be buying single eyeshadows. This is the Aurora Struck palette from ColourPop. Love this color story, and I think some of these shimmers in here are really nice too for ColourPop, because that's something that ColourPop always lacks in for me, and that's why I don't buy a lot of their eyeshadow palettes, or really none of their eyeshadow palettes, because I know the shimmers are just going to be disappointing. I never had an issue with their mattes. I think sometimes they're a little bit kind of drier, but like not in a thin way, and I have had issues with them blending, but that was like a long time ago. So I think I'm gonna let this one go. I don't reach for that one. I don't see myself reaching for that one. Next up we have a stack of Odin's Eyes. So this is the Christmas Eve palette. Still haven't filled with this one, but they did restock it. I believe they're still available. This is the Merry Christmas palette. I also did promise you a video of 2 looks with each of them. Not sure when I will be able to get that up. At this point, I'm not really sure if I will. And then this is the more recent Snow Dream palette. This one was okay. And then the Jules and Gem. Love this one. This one was in my top 10 ranking. And then the Stone and Rock palette. This was really beautiful, but I feel like we've seen this kind of color story time and time again. Then I have the 3 Legendary Diversa palettes, which were a collaboration. This one was with Tina, the Fancy Face, and I think I'm gonna let this one go. I don't really reach for that one. And then I do love the Giant Wolves palette. The color story for me is just so beautiful. One of their best color stories, I would say. And then the Red Dragon palette, also a collaboration palette. I don't know. I think I'm going to let this one go. This shade right here, Luda, is a beautiful multi-chrome shade, but I think I'm going to let that one go. And then here's the Trick or Treat palette from the collaboration with Angelica Nyquist. And this one is really nice, definitely very like traditional Halloween color. And then the Ghost palette, really beautiful. I do prefer this one over the other one. And then the Hey Reindeer palette, just color story wise. And then the Hey Reindeer palette it's pretty cute, but I'm keeping all of these, so I'm just decluttering. So here are the Flower Beauty Desert Lights, Jungle Lights, Garden Lights, and Coastal Lights palettes. Most of these shades came shattered when I first got them, so let's just take a little peek-see. These are so beautiful, really great for drugstore. I wish the pans were smaller. I just think that, oh my gosh, I don't know, they're so ginormous. These are great quality. They're a little bit on the thicker, waxy side, so I do experience a little bit of creasing issues. This one, out of all of them, has the least shiny shades. This one has, for sure, more like satin-like shades. And I just was like, oh, I want all of these. I want to do a video on these. I want to compare them, etc. And that never happened, and I honestly don't think it's going to happen, and I don't really feel like I need this in my collection, so I'm going to be decluttering all of these. Linda, Hallberg, Shimmer Saga, and Siren Song. This is the newest palette, which I did do eye swatches of this one, and then the Shimmer Saga. Love both of these. Tiny little quads. I do think they're a bit overpriced, but I think they're really nice nevertheless. Next up is the Resurrection palette from Wicked Widow Beauty. This is a beautiful kind of more rainbow color story with some stunning shimmers. I'm working on a video on that one, so stay tuned for that. The Gothic palette from Cosmic Brushes, so beautiful. This is the Enchanted Forest palette from Queen Cosmetics, really beautiful. I do wish the pans were in different sizes, but the Graveyard Smash palette from Wicked Widow Beauty, I did do a look with this palette, really nice. Keeping that one. And onto my Sugar Drizzle palettes. I have decluttered a few of these at this point, but these are the mattes. It's just too redundant. This could have been pared down, so I'm going to declutter this one. I do like the formula though. Sugar Dreams. I love the sparkly shimmers in here. Perfect pastel shades. Keeping that one. This is the Dragonfly palette. This was back when I feel like their packaging was like especially not great. It says, what if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly? I don't really understand the point of that. I do love the color story of this one. This is just, it speaks to me every time I open it, I guess. But I think it's time to let this one go, because I don't think this one's available anymore. This shade down here, Spirit, so stunning. Beautiful shimmer shadows in here. Don't Forget to Smile palette. Love the shimmers in here. Keeping this one. And then the Men I Love Frogs palette, keeping that one as well. And then this one I never did a dedicated video on, but this is the Red Panda palette. This honestly has some stunning neutral shimmers with some pops. I wish these two were actually brown. I understand it doesn't make sense with the theme of the palette overall, but this could have been like the go-to beautiful, special shimmery shadow, sparkly shimmer shadow palette, especially from Sugar Drizzle. So I'm definitely keeping this one because these shimmers are stunning. Onto Fantasy Cosmetica, the Sorcerer palette. The shade is very squishy, unfortunately, so I can't really use that one, or I have to be very careful in how I use it. The Druid palette, I did repurchase this one. I wanted the newer packaging, so I bought it during their Black Friday sale. The Rogue palette, I did also buy this one. I didn't get it when it launched. I wasn't really doing a lot of filming at that time. And then the Fighter palette, love this one. It's such a good one, such a great addition. Also a little bit more neutral for the Fantasy Cosmetica lineup. The Bard palette, also wanted the new packaging on this one, and the removable pans, the Warlock palette, also really beautiful. So I'm keeping these, obviously. This is the Hadron Collider palette, which this palette was created by actually a graphic artist that I follow on Instagram. Her username is Malavita, and the color story reflects the outer packaging. She did do this artwork, and she does a lot of these kinds of really cool, like, painty, inky art, and this was her first palette. I think some of the shimmers in here are better than others, but overall, they're very much like a standard shimmer formula, but I'm keeping this one for sure. She sent this one to me in PR, so it's just very special and meaningful to me because I do talk to her via DM sometimes, and I just love supporting other graphic artists, so definitely keeping this one. Next up are a bunch of my kind of smaller palettes, or palettes that are a little bit harder to store. So just starting out with Kaleidos. This is the Flowing Haze apparently, and this is okay. The shimmer in here is very sparkly, but I do wish it was lighter. The mattes are, I don't remember if I like love the mattes or not, honestly. I kind of really love the packaging for it, and I feel like I've been keeping it for the packaging, but I think I might declutter this one actually. And then the Sugar Drizzle Mini Mermaid Glow Cube palette. Love this one. So beautiful. Keeping this one for sure. And then the Kaleidos. These are like the two that launched with those blushes. So the smoky one. And then these kind of neutral, almost kind of a little bit cooler leaning tones. Keeping those as well. The Tro palette from Money Cosmetics. I do have a dedicated video on this one. These are just 4 stunning multichromes. I'm keeping that one. The Karla Cosmetics Romance palette. They also have another newer one. This one right here that just came out with 2 of their existing shades, but in press form with 2 mattes. I do have a video on this one. Then I have this Milani palette. I'm not really sure. I think I was trying to see if drugstore brands were improving or not, but I think I'm going to declutter that one. And then I have this Elisa Aldrich palette. I did have another one as well, but I declutter that one. Honestly, I prefer this one right here. There's only one like cream to powder matte, and then a bunch of these sparkly shades. I wish all of the shades were like this formula right here, but it is what it is. It is a really nice palette. Then I have the Catrice eyeshadow, the Pure Nude palette. These mattes are actually very interesting in here because they feel almost like a cream to powder a little bit. They're very velvety. They're so stunning. The shimmers are actually really nice in here. I bought this one when I was in Czech Republic. I'm definitely keeping this one around. And then my 3 What's Up Beauty palettes, the most recent being this Dragon Eye palette. So beautiful. Then the, what is this one called? The Geodes palette. The nail on my thumb just popped off trying to open all these palettes. And then the Monsoon palette, their very first palette. Beautiful. Love their matte formula. Their shimmers are really beautiful as well. Here are my Shellwe quads, and they do have these in mini versions as well. So stunning, and I love the simplicity of the packaging as well. But these are just really well curated little quad color stories with some stunning shimmer shadows. And then lastly is this one. I mean, so pretty. I do have videos on all of these. I believe I did like one look with each of them. And then these are my Izamaya Industrial palettes. This is the original Industrial palette. I do really like that one, but I do prefer this newer one from 2023, the Industrial 2 palette. I mean, just look at the shimmers. They're so beautiful. I did a dedicated video on this one. I really enjoy this one, even though it is expensive. And then lastly, I have a bunch of palettes I have not filmed with yet. So I'm just going to show you and let me know in the comments below which ones you would like to see me prioritize. So this is the Glaminatrix Fairy Lights palette. This is just an all shimmer palette. I'll probably put this in with my singles. I'm not sure if those are removable or not. The Fatally Yours palette, the collaboration between Bailey Saren and Melt Cosmetics. I mean, look at these tones. So beautiful. very excited. And then I got this Haggard palette. This is an Asian beauty brand. I was introduced to this brand via Face Forward, and the design is beautiful and the color story as well is really stunning, so I really wanted to get this one. So I'm planning on doing a video on this one. And that actually reminded me, I have these two Girl Cult palettes. I have so far used this one on my reels. This one is just full of shiny, multi-chromey, shifty shades. And then this one has 2 mattes in it. The shimmers feel kind of so I'm a little bit interested, but I do want to do a video where I do a look with them. This is the, I think it was a Hollow Misunderstanding or something like that from Touch of Glam Beauty. They recently got a website, so they're no longer just selling on Etsy. And this, as you can guess, has tons of holographic eyeshadows. I think you can kind of see them. So beautiful. They do have also 2 mattes. I don't think I've ever seen them do matte eyeshadow, so I'm really curious to do a video on this one, so stay tuned for that. And then the Wonderland palette from Cosmic Brushes. I have swatched this. It looks beautiful. Can't wait to use this one. And then on the note of Cosmic Brushes, I also have their Delights palette. They had a little bit of a sale going on during the Black Friday and while the Wonderland palette launched, so I kind of went ham and I just was like, oh, let me just collect them all. So that's that one. The Muse palette, very grungy. I am sweating. And then the Serenity palette, which I actually decluttered, but I decided to repurchase it and give it another go. The main thing with this palette, I really love the mattes and they perform really stunningly. It was just some of the shimmers were a little bit creasy on me, so I just want to revisit that one. So I do have all of the Cosmic Brushes palettes now. And then I did also purchase this during their last restock. This is the Archer palette, I believe, from Adept Cosmetics, and I just love the shimmers in here. So I don't know if I'm going to do a dedicated video on that one quite yet, but I do kind of want to do a video because I want to do comparisons. This is the brand Dots Cosmetics from, I believe they're a Polish brand, and they sent this palette to me, and I have not done a video with it yet. And these pens are removable, which is really nice, and the shimmers look really beautiful, and I do love the color story, so I do want to do a video on that one at some point. The Strange and Unusual Bella Beaute Bar palette. This one is the newer version, and I did buy this one on pre-order because I really wanted to have it in my collection. So here's what that looks like. So beautiful. I haven't touched it yet. Then I have the What's Your Power Remix Glossgods palette. So they actually sent me this one and another palette, but I don't think that they're even available anymore. I think this one especially was a limited edition. The shimmers in here are so beautiful, so beautiful. I've only swatched them, and I kind of want to depot them from here, but I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this palette yet, so I'm putting that one aside, undecided. And then I have these 2 Esom Beauty palettes. I have the All Matte palette, and then the shimmer palette that I just accidentally swatched one of the shades. So here's what those look like. So I want to try those out. I'm really curious to see if the mattes are similar to the Viseart mattes. And then I did also buy some P. Louise palettes, and honestly, I kind of bought these just for myself. Like, I don't always have to buy palettes just to feature them because I really like the theming of them and I like the color story. So this is the Droplet of Magic, and look at that. So beautiful. I love this color story. And then it does have a second side because, you know, P. Louise is always so extra. Here's what the other side looks like. So pretty. And then this other palette is the Hocus Pocus palette, and also there is a little locket in here with a key, so I'm just leaving it unlocked. But this one also is double-sided, so this one has a little bit of a different kind of color story, but you know, P. Louise does launch quite a few palettes all the time, so I just feel like I'm kind of all set with these because I just really like the theming of these. And then I did buy this giant palette that doesn't even fit in the frame. This is the Michaela and P. Louise collaboration palette to have a 2-hole, and this lights up when you open it. Oh my god, it's so extra. So here it is. Okay, I can actually fit it in here. So here's the color story. I mean, obviously very redundant, but I was already making an order and I was just like, let me just throw it in there. I'm really curious because the shimmers in here, it definitely looks like they've upgraded the shimmers. They look so stunning. They kind of look like the Glam Light shimmer, so I'm really curious. I don't know if I'm going to do a video on this. I don't really feel like my audience cares, but I just really wanted these 3 palettes for myself. I'll put the total up on the screen. Again, I wasn't really trying to aim for a specific number, but I do feel like good about these. I definitely think that I'm probably going to go through my collection in about probably like 6 months and just revisit it and just see anything that I really feel like, okay, I still haven't touched this. I don't really feel like I want this. It's not really my style, etc. But that's everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.